Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een amma ba'd. So after discussing envy and jealousy for in the last sessions, we move on to another related aspect, which is just hating someone. Some people just like to hate people. It makes them feel good to hate people. Some people can't help hating people. They don't want to hate people, but there's just something in the heart. I think it could be from some kind of trauma. It could be from some kind of unbalanced childhood. It could be from some kind of deprivation growing up. It could be from some kind of abuse that a person may have experienced in their life. So it's made them hate. That's been their outlet, that's been their reaction. So if a person does find that they just easily hate people and negatively look down on people, then it's worth checking out, because you don't have to be like that. You don't have to live your life like that. A life with hatred is a very, very, very depressing life. Every time you see somebody, you hate them, and I hate them, and I hate you, and I hate this person and that person. I hate myself for hating you. It's a cycle. It's not what humans are supposed to be, therefore. And you'll understand how our Sharia scholars have explained this. Hatred, or in Arabic, hiqd in Arabic. Let's see if we're going to define it so that we can understand whether what we feel is a hatred or not. Hatred is to harbor feelings of animosity and contempt, and to force oneself to deem someone else unbearable, or to avoid him, and then to despise him. So that's what it is. Feeling of animosity and contempt, and then we try to avoid somebody and try to despise them. Now, before you jump to any conclusion, there could be justified reasons for avoiding certain people, right? But then the contempt and so on. The hater usually desires evil and harm for the person, for that person that they hate, every time he sees that person, or every time that person crosses his mind. So the person might not even be there, but 10 times he comes into our mind and our dreams and plagues us, even though he doesn't even know what's going on. So it's ajib how this story we create in our mind sometimes. What is the legal ruling of it? Is it halal to hate? So its legal ruling is that it is haram and unlawful if it is not due to the oppression from that person. If somebody oppresses you, then you're justified to hate them to a certain degree. But if they don't oppress you, but what happens if you think they oppress you and they don't really oppress you? Because some people are very sensitive. They just feel like everybody's oppressing them, even though it was completely justified, it was correct, or there was nothing substandard. Okay, but rather due to a right and a just cause on the other's part. Let me read that again. It is not due to oppression from that person, but it was due to something correct and a just cause on the other person. The guy did something was absolutely just. For example, commanding you to do good or forbidding an evil. Brother, you should not be talking outside the masjid. Brother, you should not be disturbing people. Brother, you should not be eating this. This is haram. You should not be speaking to so-and-so. This kind of relationship is not correct. This job is haram, or this business you're doing is not good. So you hate him. Why did you tell me for? I live in a free world, postgraduate, post-modern world, relative truths. What I think is right, what you might think is wrong, I think is right. It's fine. We can both be right about this, and so on and so forth. If it is due to oppression from the person, somebody oppresses you, then it is not unlawful. It's not haram then. Then what is it? The way we should react to that is, if the person is unable to take his right, the person is oppressing you and you can't get your right from them, then you've got two options. You either can delay the matter until the day of arising. Okay, fine, I can't take my right. This is, we've got Islam, alhamdulillah, we've got the Day of Judgment. One of the wisdoms of the Day of Judgment is that it gives hope to those hopeless ones in this world. Imagine if you had no belief in a day of judgment, then if you're oppressed in this world and you have no power, you're totally subjugated, everybody's against you, you can't solicit any help from anyone, you'd be depressed. You'd probably commit suicide. And I've seen people with Iman, they've been through some major trials in this world that, another person might just totally end his life. And these guys have gone through it. So I'm like shocked, subhanallah. Because it's all in the hereafter, I'll get it back, I'll get my right. Justice will prevail. So that's why he's saying that you can either leave it and consign it to the day of arising, or number two, which is probably even more difficult, is forgive them. Forgive them. This is actually better because Allah says, وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى, that you pardon is nearer to piety. The only time you can actually pardon somebody is if your connection with Allah is strong enough that you feel, okay, I'm going to pardon, I'm not losing much because I know Allah is going to compensate me. Because I know Allah is going to compensate me. Allah is greater for me than anything I can do myself to that person. Only those people are able to forgive. Two people are able to forgive. Well, two people are able to let go. One is the weak ones. They can't do anything. It's like, okay, I can't do anything. The other one are those who can do something, but they prefer not to by saying, I'm going to leave it to Allah. What Allah can do is much mightier. I've got limited means at my disposal, but what Allah can do, it's beyond any kind of constraints. If he is able to take his right back, then he may still pardon the oppressor, which is even better than the first type of pardoning, where you couldn't take your right back, but you still pardoned him for the Day of Judgment. In this one, you've got power, but you still pardon. Or unless it's bad to pardon, and it's only if somebody you keep pardoning them and they just get more belligerent and bold, then that's bad. Then you don't pardon those kind of people usually, because they're just going to affect other people. Or one may defend oneself. Nothing wrong with that. That is, take back his right, but without taking more than what was taken. So there you have to think of The Merchant of Venice. If you've read that book, The Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare, where it's like, how much do you take back exactly? If somebody aggressed against you, gave you a slap, how do you give a slap back to that exact same force? Anything more and you're in trouble. Anything less, it's okay. But usually when you want to do more, don't you? So it's one of those kind of situations when you get down into it. So Allah this entails justice. So you can justice means that you can take back what you were given. Yet it is less meritorious than pardoning, because pardoning is just easier. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states that verily one who defends himself after having been oppressed, for such people there is no path of blame. So you are allowed. In Islam we have a very, very fair system. You can definitely take revenge to a certain degree. However, defending oneself could be more meritorious than pardoning. Sometimes defending oneself is definitely better than pardoning them, due to extraneous factors, such as if pardoning somebody would lead to more oppression, while defending oneself would lead to its lessening. In any case, if the oppressed one takes more than his due right, it is deemed unfairness and oppression. So you don't want to become the oppressor. So you just have to be very careful. You have to keep your anger in check in all of these places. The disasters of hatred, meaning its harms and evils, are numerous. Among them are the following. If you hate somebody, you'll envy them if they get something better than you. So then envy comes in. You'll feel pleasure at the other's misfortune. Sometimes that's good. If there's an oppressor and they finally get what's coming to them, then it's okay to feel good. That part is fine. But for anything else, like they oppress you with something and then they get in trouble for something else, then you have to be careful about that one. Shunning, you'll shun that person, you'll belittle that person, you'll lie about that person, you could backbite about that person, you could divulge their secrets, you could start mocking them, you could start harming them without just cause, you will not fulfill their rights, such as kinship ties. It's a very difficult one, especially if it's family that you have an issue with, then you won't fulfill kinship ties, which are more important than everything else. More important than everything else. Paying back a debt, or warding off oppression. You'll then think that everything is justified just because he did something of oppression to you. And that's not true. Anger could be a cause of hatred. So he's discussing, how do you get hatred? I explained, I started off with the discussion about multiple factors. He brings another one, is that you've got excessive anger in you. Why? Again, it could be based on some trauma, some abuse, or whatever the case. We've not been taught to manage our anger. Misplaced anger. Some people are angry by nature. Every human being, every baby, every child that grows up or is growing up is given by Allah a set of qualities and strengths and capabilities, and also a small package of weaknesses and challenges. Every single human being is like that. The successful ones are the ones who figure out their strengths and use them to live in this world and deal with matters and make their living and so on. And they understand their weaknesses and they control them. They understand them. Every single human being has some weaknesses and some challenges, but they also have some strengths. Is there anybody here who's not understood their strengths or their weaknesses and they're still figuring this out? Anybody? Who's understood all of their weaknesses and all of their strengths? Nobody. Okay. So I guess in between, who's understood some of their strengths and some of their weaknesses? Because without that, you can't be successful. You'd be a failure. If you are failing, it means you haven't figured out, because Allah has given you some qualities. You've just subdued them for some reason. We're going into another subject, we'll talk about that some other time. But anger could be a major cause of hatred, for indeed, were one to be forced to suppress his anger by being incapable of venting it and immediately taking revenge on the person with whom he is angry, then that current anger becomes internalized and suppressed, whereby it then transforms into utter hatred. Usually this happens when you are angry about something. You can't express your anger because you've been abused and subjugated and bullied, or you just have been subjugated. So then that internalizes and then it just creates havoc inside. So sometimes it's good to just vent your anger in the right way, right? Just so that it does not internalize, or to deal with it. Sheikh Mustafa Al-Arusi comments that of the diseases of the soul is its hatred for the one who harms it, followed by desiring harm to befall the other person, finding pleasure in his misfortune, and so forth. The cause of this disease is the soul's ignorance of its Lord, insofar as it sees actions as emanating from other than him. What helped me, what was really an eye-opener for me, is something Ibn Ata'illah said. He said that Allah will cause harm to come to you from your most closest ones. Why? So that you do not repose in anybody but Allah. Because when people turn you off, rather than hate them, you should just realize that at the end of the day, the only one who can always be there for me is Allah. So what it does, it deflects your whole focus from that person, and you can easily, much more easily, say, oh, it's from Allah. This guy's causing me issue from Allah. Because Allah wants me only to focus on Him. Because where's harm going to come to us from? Does harm usually come from strangers or people we know? It's a neighbor, somebody you know, a friend, somebody you meet often, a colleague, or family, usually. Sometimes, seldomly, you get harm from a stranger, but most of the time it's from people that we know. So he's saying, look, Allah is allowing this to happen because He wants you to only be focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know that only you can trust Him and nobody else. So He doesn't want you to feel comfortable with others. Not to say you should never feel comfortable with others, but you should never feel that you are ever secure except with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the only one there for you. When I heard that, it just made life easier. That if somebody doesn't, okay, all right, it's not a big deal. I understand. Allah wants to teach me something, that I must focus more on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's just pushing you towards Allah, pushing you towards Allah. That's the whole purpose of it. You still love our family and we still have to fulfill it. So, love for, then he says, the causes of disease is the soul's ignorance of its Lord, insofar that it sees the actions that are coming to him from other than Allah. love for immediate comfort for the ego, and wanting revenge on anyone who causes it pain. Indeed, the heart is adamant on instantaneous victory. Especially living in the West, we believe in instant gratification, so you want instant victory, and this prevents it from witnessing the decree in all of this, that all harm or good from others was eternally decreed by Allah. It's just another dimension that just helps us manage our thoughts. So such a person's heart remains steadfast and determined on achieving its aim of exacting vengeance. This is the meaning of hatred, and from it stems shamata, schadenfreude, which is to be satisfied at other people's misfortunes. Yet, besides being sinful and a vile illness, hatred is but torment for one's own soul. It's not healthy. You get depressed with this. It's stress causing. There's what's the stress hormone called? Serotonin. Okay, so you got the bad hormones coming out. You need dopamine instead, and oxytocin, the love hormone. That makes you feel better. So it's torment for one's own soul, along with perpetual stress and anxiety, and it provides no benefit at all, not in this life and certainly not in the afterlife. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to manage it. May Allah allow us to manage it and curb it. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله.